Well, Kyle, there is a bit of Tesla news today. Wearing my Tesla hat and you're wearing your Tesla hoodie. That's great. Yes, I guess Tesla is just all over the news, but we have some positive Tesla news, I think, which is the fact that we now see an actual proof that the Cybertruck is being made into a rear-wheel drive variant, and that comes to us through the Tesla, I think UAE website.
I thought it was Tesla Saudi Arabia.
Well, I'm on the UAE site, and they also have it there. So maybe it's both. It's
Oh,
it's I think it's the Middle Eastern market as a whole, is my understanding. Which
oh, it
there
could
are,
be.
yeah, there are a few different areas on the website that are Middle Eastern, but Saudi Arabia, UAE, they have English translations directly because a lot of English speaking over there. But yes, we have some new imagery. Tesla showed the Cybertruck just running around the dunes in rear-wheel drive form, which is actually kind of awesome.
Well, maybe in rear-wheel drive form. I'm not 100% sure. It almost looks like that front tire is doing a little something something there, Jordan. But yes, it is primarily rear-driven. So when Cybertruck launched, they promised they would do a rear drive, an all-wheel drive, and then the Cyber Beast Performance. We actually own the Cyber Beast Performance. We've had it over a year. I just uploaded my 1-year ownership report. And one thing I thought Tesla would almost never do is to make a rear drive Cybertruck. I thought, especially for the US market, which at the time we were thinking Cybertruck would just be for North America, you either want all wheel drive capability for snow and adverse conditions, or especially for off-roading. And while we did get a lot of comments at the time saying that people would like a cheaper rear drive only version, you still look at the percentage of trucks sold in the US, and maybe like other than Texas and some of the Southwest, all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive trucks are extremely popular. So I thought Tesla would never do it. And here they are actually fulfilling a promise of a rear drive Cybertruck. As far as we can tell, Jordan, there's other changes as well, or at least other speculatory changes here.
Right. We are working with breadcrumbs, as is usually the case with Tesla, but they are now showing up to 563 kilometers on that cycle. But the
And do
the
they use WLTP over there in the Middle East?
I'm not sure.
Oh, you know what? They may not have to rate the Cybertruck. Like Cybertruck, I don't think was EPA range rated.
Yeah, they don't specify here on the website in the specs section, which they usually would. So what we see here is Cyber Beast and all-wheel drive, which is nothing new. Those barely change anything on the specs page. But when you toggle over here to this new third toggle, which is long range, they don't even say rear-wheel drive, but it is rear-wheel drive. Shows right here. It is 563 kilometers up from the 523 of all-wheel drive. So I guess
So
they're
it's like,
saving 40 miles, or 40 kilometers, which is like 25 miles.
yeah, I'm actually surprised it's that much of a difference.
Well, another difference that we can tell is, of course, slower acceleration, 6.6 seconds, 0 to 100 kph versus, 4.3 or 2.7 with the other trims.
Oh,
Um,
also wheels look different.
yeah, which could be, well, I think, let's see, those are just the Aero type wheels, or is this a new Aero
Oh, it's
wheel?
a new 18-inch.
Yeah, interesting.
Dude, that actually looks kind of cool.
Which means probably a new brake because wait, no, yours works with 18-inch wheels too, right?
I have 18s on
Yeah.
mine with some fat tires. Now, what's interesting about going with an 18-inch wheel? Yeah, see, it says 18 or 20-inch wheel, and that's a
Yep.
photo of the 18-inch new wheels. We have never seen those wheels before.
Yep.
The I have 18-inch wheels on my truck with big off-road tires. The range reduced drastically because actually, when you start getting into the truck space, tires, especially off-road rated tires, get
Yep.
so heavy and so unaerodynamic that it almost is more beneficial for range to go up in size on the wheel and then to reduce some of that tire oscillation and tire weight by bringing the sidewall down. Now, in this case, they probably went for more of an all-season tire, something that wasn't as hardcore as like what I'm running on my truck now. And it does seem like the extra range probably, Jordan, I would say, is contributing from removing the front induction motor off of the dual motor drivetrain. That's a little bit of weight, a little bit of gear train loss that's removed. It really doesn't it shouldn't impact that much. But I bet most of that increased range is coming from that new wheel and tire package.
Right. That's what I think is the case. And also, it could be suspension related and ride height related. So if you look at the all-wheel drive in Cyber Beast, it says 406 millimeters in extract mode, which is about 16 inches. Actually, I think yours does like 17 point something in extract mode.
Well,
Um,
different markets could have different requirements for where you
yeah.
rate the height. We've run into that many times with weird specified rating things.
Right. So it's 406 millimeters, but with the long range, it just says 243 millimeters, which is just under 10 inches ground clearance. And there is no, mention of extract mode. So it could also be just a steel spring suspension, maybe with some sort of adaptive damper like we've seen in some of the other cars. And so that's a possibility. Or maybe they just removed, all off-road modes and removed some of the extension variants in the air suspension if they kept the air suspension.
Right. If they kept the air suspension, which I would imagine they would have, unless they're thinking they're really going to go high volume, because they would have to then engineer and validate a completely different suspension setup. Yeah, going with steel removes some cost and complexity out of the truck, and they certainly could do it. And another thing leading me to believe maybe they did it is it tows less.
Right.
Which means, okay, maybe they're worried about too much squat in the rear. There's other benefits to having a dual motor when it comes to towing, of course, for thermal performance and other things, which also go into a tow rating. But we're down on tow capacity to, I want to say 7,000 something pounds.
Yeah, it might be like 7,500. It's 3,400 kilograms versus the normal 4,990, nearly 5,000 kilograms.
Yeah, it's
So
7,500 pounds on the
yeah,
nose.
yeah. So 7,500, definitely less towing capacity. And something else that's different is the cargo capacity. So you have
Huh.
3,423 liters, so 3,400 ish liters on the all-wheel drive and Cyber Beast, 3,385 liters. So it's actually less storage capacity on this one for some reason, and I can't, for the life of me, figure out why that would be.
That really makes no
Be-
sense. It went down.
Yeah, because we've seen with like EV9 and some other cars where it's like, oh, you remove the front motor, boom, more space, more storage. I don't understand how this has gone down. So
Yeah, that's an interesting question, isn't it? So, I guess how much cheaper is it? Do they have pricing on it yet?
no, all it says, as far as I can tell, is just get updates.
Okay.
So it's just, yeah, Cybertruck page, and deliveries begin in late 2025, and I believe that's the same for all UAE markets. Now, this could be a situation where they unveil it in the UAE first, and then maybe they'll unveil it in other markets. We're assuming they might. Maybe
You
they'll do it
mean
in
in the
North
Middle
America.
East, they'll do it, and then maybe they'll release it in North America?
Yeah, yeah. So, and they might even release around the same time. They just might unveil it in the UAE or the Middle East first, and then unveil it for us later. It's
I have
really hard to
another
say.
idea, Jordan.
Okay.
Tesla always does their updates on Thursday evenings, which
Ah,
it's Thursday evening in the UAE right now.
yep.
It might just be a few hours away from this launching in the North American market.
So tonight we might have more answers here.
Right, which we're not going to make another episode because I think it's just an episode on this, but unless there's something really interesting about it.
Yeah.
But I do think, like in general, for a lot of people, a rear drive truck can work. I would say if it's not a huge price delta, just having, oh, it shows US specs shown.
This is little language at the very bottom says US specs shown, and I still have rear wheel drive selected, long range.
Jordan, you
So
cracked the code.
we might be seeing the actual US specs unveiled, just not on the US website yet.
This is
We
what
gotta
I
get, we
call
gotta
the
get this up.
yeah, that really talks to each department. This is wonderful. Um, Top speed still like 112 miles an hour, 180 kph.
Yeah, which I think is the same as
It's
all-wheel
all
drive. Yeah.
Yep, and then it goes to 130 for Cyber Beast.
And then
Uh,
you'll note no mention of range extender on the long range. So they still
ooh.
show it for all-wheel drive and Cyber Beast, but then with long range, it's removed entirely from this listing here.
But as far as we can tell, battery capacity, battery pack stays the same, charging performance looks the same.
Yep.
The kilometers added in 15 minutes. Can you go to the all-wheel drive? So this is
Yes.
237. What's the
versus
all-wheel?
220. So
220 makes sense.
slight different. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit
About,
more efficient.
yep. So that's about what I can tell. And yeah, again, the overall height dimension is the only one that's different between the two. Just a few, honestly, just a centimeter. Yeah, 11 millimeters or so listed here. But then the ground clearance is a big difference. So my theory, I don't know. I think it'd be interesting if they went to a spring setup because they're like, you know what? Let's make this cheaper. Sure, it adds more cost to do the additional, checks and balances and like validation and everything. But once that's done, like I wonder what that break even point is, where it's like, okay, now that's done. Now we just ship a ton of these without air suspension and see how well they sell. And I'd be really curious to see how well it rides.
Dude, base model Cybertruck probably goes pretty hard. I like that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. I like the idea of a base model truck because if you're really just doing truck things, which is
Yep.
like for fleet use, as an example, you don't need all-wheel drive most of the time if you're in like a mild climate. You don't need a fancy interior. You don't need air suspension. You just need a big bed and an electric drivetrain and exportable power. And hopefully this has all of those attributes to it. So I think a lot of people will be excited about the launch of the long range rear drive. However, I think if it's $5,000 less, that's not enough less, especially if the air suspension's gone.
Yep.
Like I think air suspension plus front motor is worth every bit of $5,000. I think this has to be $7,500 less than the
Yep.
all-wheel drive by the time we see pricing. It might only be a few hours after the show goes up till pricing happens. We're not sure.
Yeah. But we'll of course report that whenever we know because I think that'd be really interesting to see how that would change and will the other pricing stay the same? It's really hard to tell with Tesla. I mean, in a month they could adjust all the prices. So makes for constant news flow, I guess, from that company anyways. But
yeah, no lack of excitement happening around this stuff, but it looks like you still get the big screen. The software is amazing. I really love the idea. I can't stress enough of a cheap, beater work truck, Cybertruck. I don't think this is going to be cheap enough, Jordan. F-150 Lightnings go down. You got news? What's new?
I got more news. Look at the displays section. 18.5-inch center touchscreen, and then you switch another one, and then it says rear touchscreen. So they delete that. More
I
cost
told you,
saving.
stripper model. It's got to be cheap though.
License plate stripped. That's what
Yeah.
I would get. So yeah,
Just don't get a bedazzled license plate because then people will think you're into something else.
right. Which they might think about anyway with the Cybertruck. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. All right. Well, that's a great spot, Jordan. I think definitely no lack of content from our side. This could be the range king. Sounds like it will be. Can't wait to run it through our testing as soon as possible. Really want to get one on the aero wheels. I want to see if 6.6 seconds is too slow. I think no. I think that feels about right for something like this.
I think that's fine. That's still noticeably faster than the rear-wheel drive EV9, which we didn't think was fast at all, but also not egregious. So I think sub 7 seconds, fine for most people.
Yeah, in the EV world, power is a little different than combustion world because there's no sense of like things working. It's just you put your foot down and you want to go. And I think the power is going to be just fine. I really hope they leave a way to turn off stability control in this because it's going to be a drift monster.
Give me a rear-wheel drive. No, yeah, that's the move.
Let's not give you that. But
yes.
yes.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, keep all the nannies on. So
good stuff, Jordan. Why don't you wrap this up? That's exciting. We found out way more than I was expecting just from reading the spec page.
Yeah, it's fun to find out news in live time. So thanks for joining us. And of course, we'll bring whatever more news we can. We still have answers left unknown with the new Model Y stuff. Additional trims coming out on that. We'll keep an eye on the foreign markets because that's usually clues to seeing what happens in our market. And usually we're just guessing. But the fact that this says U.S. specs shown makes me think we're on the money here. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys in the next one very soon. And until then, bye-bye.